So there's a company called OceanGate, which is a company which owns this submersible called the Titan, which is used to take tourists down to the wreck of the Titanic, 2 miles below the ocean surface. Last Sunday, June 18th, there was a expedition that was launched to go to the bottom of the ocean floor to explore the Titanic site, which had 5 people aboard. I think 4 tourists and 1 captain of the ship, which is also the CEO of the company. So these 5 people were aboard the ship. They launched about an hour and 40 minutes into their dive. Communications were lost with the Titan. But when it was time for the ship to reascend, communications were never reestablished. The Titan is lost. No one knows where it is. And it is lost to this point, which when I'm recording this, which is the 21st of June, Wednesday. So 4 days later, I did read that that the Titan has enough life support to support everyone on board for 96 hours. So theoretically, everybody could still be alive and probably could still be alive till tomorrow, so Thursday. The more you hear about Titan, the scarier the situation becomes, though. So the first thing I think of when I hear the name Titan, right? Well, the first thing I think of is, why would you name your submersible after the shipwreck, that you're meant to be exploring? Doesn't that seem like, like bad luck? The second thing I think is, Titan, that must be a very large submersible, right? Because Titan conjures up images of like large, right? But if you actually look at a picture of the Titan submersible, it is like tiny. There is barely enough room for the 5 people on board. There isn't even enough room for the people to stand up. Everybody has to remain sitting for the entire voyage. In fact, I read that there's only enough room for one person to be able to stretch their legs out at a time. Everybody else has to sit like crisscross applesauce or with their knees tucked into their chest. It seems very uncomfortable, actually. There is a toilet on board, but to say that it has a bathroom is a bit of a stretch, because the toilet is only separated from the rest of the cabin by a privacy curtain. But in a way, the bathroom is probably the best part of the ship, because it's the only part of the ship that has a window. Although I think normally they probably can see out the window, because they probably just drop the curtain back and I'll look out of it. But it is a pretty small window that they have to look out of. And I don't know, don't you think if you had to use the toilet, that it would make the ship smell really bad? Because aren't they just reusing the air or whatever? So if you had to go to if you had to poop, I don't think that smell is leaving the cabin anytime soon. Or if you're just sweaty, which I imagine these people are, because they're probably fearing for their lives. They probably are pretty sweaty, probably pretty smelly. You know what? It's been 4 days. Someone, if they're still alive, someone's pooped by now. It must smell terrible in there. There are a few things about the ship that just raise red flags. For instance, a lot of the components of the ship are off the shelf. So they're not made by the company. They're not made by OceanGate. They're just purchased off the shelf. For instance, the entire ship is run by a video game controller. A wireless video game controller, which that does raise a red flag for me, because the entire ship's navigation relies on this video game controller that's wireless. I mean, I don't think that's inherently a bad thing, but that's your like only way to steer the ship. But what if you have like troubles with like the Bluetooth in like the controller? Then can you just like not control your ship? That would be a pretty terrible way to die if the like Bluetooth in your controller just stops working. I mean, it's not funny, but I'm laughing because that's what I do sometimes. So, sorry, just calm down. I get comments. Sorry. Another thing is that there aren't any backup communication devices. So there's no way to communicate with the surface if the communication system fails, which it has done so in the past. You think they would maybe like do something about that. And also, there was a person who worked for OceanGate previously. His name was David Lockridge. He was the director of marine operations. And in 2018, he wrote a report about how he thought that passengers would be endangered if the ship were to go to extreme depths. And he listed a few reasons. He commented on the ship's use of the acoustic monitoring. So I guess there's like a computer that listens to cracking or popping sounds that the hull would make if it was under pressure. And it uses this to be able to detect flaws in the hull of the ship. They do that. They do acoustic monitoring as opposed to taking scans of the hull. But Lockridge said, and I quote, "This was problematic because this type of acoustic analysis would only show when a component is about to fail, often milliseconds before an implosion, and would not detect any existing flaws prior to putting pressure on the hull." Lockridge also mentioned how the Titan was making trips to depths of up to 4,000 meters. But the passenger viewport, so I think the window that's in the bathroom was only certified for depths of up to 1,300 meters. And they wouldn't pay for the manufacturer to build a viewport that could be certified for 1,400 meters or for 4,000 meters. Yeah, the viewport is another thing that is another component that the company used. That the company bought off the shelf. It's very like strange. I guess it's like a cost-cutting measure. I should mention that everybody, all the tourists on board, paid $250,000 to be on the submersible, which is a lot of money. But I think it's cheap compared to other more safe submersibles. Still, rich people like to die in weird places. Have you ever noticed that? Like on Mount Everest or whatever? Or at the bottom of the ocean? So there's a few things that could have happened. One is that it could have just, there could have been a failure of the hull, right? And the thing could have just imploded. It could have just imploded and everybody could have just died instantly. Maybe the submersible was entangled in debris or something and got stuck. Maybe the submersible was able to surface despite their communications being down. But however, now they're on the surface waiting to be rescued. The other thing is that the Titan can only be opened from the outside because the opening hatch is like bolted from the outside. So even if they made it to the surface, there'd be no way for them to open the actual Titan. So they could literally be at the surface like right now, but still suffocate if no one finds them in time. That does seem like a pretty big design flaw, don't you think? Oh, ho. Wait, there is hope. People, I guess they've been hearing like this banging sound, like rescuers who have been patrolling the area. I think there are rescuers there's like the United States Coast Guard. There's people from Canada. There's people from maybe other countries too that are looking in the area where they could be. And they have said that they've heard this like periodic banging sound that happens every like 30 minutes. And they're thinking maybe that could be the Titan. So there is a little bit of hope. I'm saying it's probably, if I were to guess, I would say it's probably just not the Titan. The banging probably just is something else, and the people of the Titan are probably all dead. They probably just imploded. That would be my guess if I had to guess. I mean, it's not impossible. I would love for them to be recovered because it would be a pretty epic story, honestly. That's like so terrifying though, like to like have something go wrong and still be alive for the next like 4 days and wondering if you were going to die and just like sitting there alone with your thoughts. It would be like torture, actually. In that cramped little, submersible. It's not a submarine because what is the difference? I think a submarine can navigate while it's on the surface. I think a submersible can only, at least the Titan can only navigate while it's underwater, but when it's onto the surface, it can't navigate. I don't know. But I mean, is the Titan really worse than that like boat full of migrants that were set for Greece that sank and like 300 people died? Yeah, that's a thing that happened just a few days ago, but I feel like there's not as much coverage about that. But to be fair, the Titan is like, there's a mystery about it. Also, it's like a unique sort of horror. Like if you can imagine actually being on there and like having like 4 days of just having to sit there and wondering if you're going to make it out and realizing that you're not, that's like so uniquely horrifying. But I mean, objectively, like the Pakistani migrant Greece boat disaster is probably worse. Well, that's sad. I honestly hope everybody on the Titan is found okay, because that honestly would be pretty amazing. It'd be a good story. And we would actually find out what went wrong, which I kind of want to know. It's unlikely though. I mean, if they're found, I'll put like I'll pin a comment on this video, because they might be found by the time I get this video up. Probably not, though. Anyways, let's move on to our next stories, which feature more nautical news. Let's do an update about the orcas that are sinking the boats. If you remember last week, we did a story about how a pod of orcas near the Strait of Gibraltar is going up to sailboats, going up to yachts, tearing off the rudders of boats, and sometimes, and in some cases, sinking boats. And they're doing it just because it's fun, mostly. I mean, no one knows exactly why, but there's a few theories. But I think the predominant one seems to be that the orcas just think it's fun. Which is hilarious. Like it's a fad among them. They're like, hey, you do it now. You do it. You sink this one. You haven't sinking any boats yet. But recently, just a few days ago, there was an unusually large pod of orcas spotted off the coast of California. A pod of 30 orcas. Also, there was a pod of orcas spotted off the coast of New England in an area that they're not normally seen. Normally, this would just be cool. But with the orcas rising up and sinking boats, this feels ominous, doesn't it? It doesn't. It's this. All of this nonsense with the boats is just entirely localized to this population of like 30 orcas in the Strait of Gibraltar. But there are 50,000 orcas worldwide by some estimations. They could really do some serious damage if they all teamed up. What are they doing? What are they doing up gathering on the coasts? That's what it feels like, doesn't it? But the experts, they say it's unlikely to spread. The behavior from the Iberian orcas is unlikely to spread to other populations of orcas. What's that? There was a orca pod off the coast of Scotland that attacked a boat. This feels not good. Keep your eyes peeled, folks, for orcas. But luckily, luckily, I am far inland. There's no way for the orcas to get to me, so I'm safe. Wait, what? Orcas can swim up rivers? I'm close to a river, probably. So is everybody. Who isn't close to a river? Jeez. No one is safe. But at the end of the day, I still actually like orcas. You know, they're pretty cool. They've never actually killed a human in the wild. And they're smart animals. They're probably one of the smartest animals. What I won't stand for is the absolute slander of the killer whale committed by The Atlantic, which recently came out with an article completely defaming the orca. The Atlantic described orcas as sadistic jerks. And the reason they pointed out that orcas will just like play with seal pups, like they'll torture seal pups, but they'll be playing, right? They'll just be like playing with their food before they eat it, essentially. Also, like, you know, one of the theories is about why the Iberian orcas are attacking boats is that they're just doing it for fun, which is kind of funny. But the Atlantic is presenting this as a way that they're sadistic jerks, apparently. But if the Atlantic cares so much about seal pups, let me ask you, what do humans do to seal pups, huh? What do humans do to seals? I would like to ask you what the Atlantic's opinion on humans are. I feel like orcas. I'm gonna say it. I feel like orcas are better than most humans. The smartest orca is smarter than the dumbest human. Also, why is the Atlantic taking an anti-whale take at a time where, the lives and habitats of countless marine animals, including killer whales, are threatened by human activity? Also, doesn't the Atlantic know that their name is of the ocean? Why are they taking an anti-ocean stance? That's surprising. That surprises me. The poor orcas, they just want to live, frolic, torture their seal pups, and just be left alone. I mean, the torturing seal pups is kind of sad, but, I mean, it's not that sad. Like, who cares about seals anyways? Clearly humans don't. Also, there was a bear that just came out of the ocean in Florida. I feel like I need to mention that. There was like beachgoers that were on a Florida beach, and all of a sudden, out of the Gulf of Mexico, a bear just like they thought it was a shark because it was so far out, and they just saw something coming in, and they realized it was a bear. Yeah, I guess bears are just like really good swimmers, and they could swim for super far. And I guess they can be in Florida. I didn't realize that they could be so far south. But yeah, I mean, normally they probably wouldn't go to such a populated beach. They would probably try to avoid humans. But this one just decided, screw it, which you got to appreciate. The mammals are teaming up. If the orcas recruit their bears in their tirade against humans, I think we're done. We're done. So because of the recent killer whale news, I have been watching a lot of killer whale documentaries, and you really have to appreciate these animals because they really are quite interesting. But despite that, I will say that I am glad that I am not a seal, a dolphin, a penguin, a whale, a shark, a fish, or a SeaWorld trainer. Because killer whales can beat up all of those things. Okay, I think that's enough nautical news for now. Let's move on to beer news, specifically Bud Light. Oh no. Bud Light is no longer the number one beer in America. I mean, sure, there has been like a declining trend for the past 10 years in Bud Light sales. in Bud Light's share of the market. But recently there has been the boycott, the conservative boycott, because Bud Light sponsored a Instagram post of a trans rights activist, Dylan Mulvaney. The number one beer in America is now Modelo. A Mexican beer is now the number one beer in America. That's outrageous. Are you happy, conservatives? I had to clean up a broken bottle of Modelo at work the other day. I cut my thumb. No, I don't drink beer, so I don't know. It might be really good. But I have a solution. I have an idea for Bud Light, and this is a pretty genius solution, if I do say so myself. This is how Bud Light can get out of their dilemma. They can say for every 1% sales of Bud Light are down compared to last year. So in other words, how much money we're losing because of the boycott. For every percent we lose compared to last year, we're going to pay for 100 people's gender reassignment surgery. Oh, what are the conservatives going to do? Boycott? Keep their boycott going so that Bud Light loses even more money and pays for more gender reassignment surgeries? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, this way, everybody's happy. Bud Light's happy because presumably more people are going to be buying their beer. The trans people are happy because they're getting their surgeries. And the conservatives are happy because they can drink Bud Light, knowing that by doing so, they're actually preventing gender reassignment surgery, which is the only thing they care about. Hey, calm down. You have to admit that it makes sense from a strictly business perspective. I'm just saying, Bud Light, you're free to use that. You're free to use that one. It's called doubling down, actually. There was a man in Illinois who was having a bit of a nightmare. He was dreaming that there was an intruder that had broken into his home. And he woke up. He didn't realize that he had just been dreaming. He pulled out his gun and shot himself in the leg. And then he wasn't able to legally own a firearm in Illinois. So he was arrested. That's just like a series of bad luck, you know? I mean, the poor guy's already shot himself. I mean, he didn't hurt anybody else. He's being charged for owning a firearm without a valid firearm owner's identification card and reckless discharge of a firearm, both of which are felonies. Yeah, the bullet actually went through his leg, and when the emergency responders arrived, he was bleeding pretty heavily, actually. So yeah, probably not a good day for this guy. All because he had a dream that he was defending himself against an intruder, and then he woke up and was confused. All right, let's move on to our next story. There was a man in Sri Lanka who set a world record for the world's largest kidney stone. It was about the size of a grapefruit, as long as a banana, and as heavy as 4 hamsters. Could you excuse me for just 1 second? All right, thank you. It actually broke 2 world records. One record for length and one for weight. So he actually broke 2 world records in one go. I think it had to be removed by surgery because it was so big. Yeah, kidney stones are just little bits of material that crystallize in the kidneys or the bladder or something like that. And they're notoriously very painful. And sometimes you just have to pee them out. larger ones do have to sometimes be dealt with through surgery. I mean, there are things you could do. You could try to stay hydrated. You can reduce salt intake, but there are factors that you can't control, like genetic factors, that increase your risk of kidney stones. So that's kind of sad for some people. Also, I did see that there was a 2018 study that suggested the prevalence of kidney stones is increasing in both men and women in the United States. Don't know what that's all about. Kind of sucks though. Let's just move on to our next story, which is about another world record for the world's tallest poison ivy plant. God damn, there's so many sad world records. The story of this one is insane. There was a man in Ontario that found this sort of vine on his property that was growing up a tree. It took him a while to figure out what type of vine it was, but when he suspected the vine might be poison ivy, he wanted to get a better view. So he ended up digging up this like buckthorn that was in front of this tree with this poison ivy vine. But he ended up with poison ivy rash on his hands, arms, face, and stomach. He said later that he suspected that the sort of oil that's on poison ivy, it must have gotten into it must have seeped into the dirt. It must have gotten into the roots of the buckthorn he was digging up. So yeah, he was not having a good day because he got poison ivy literally everywhere. Just to look at this poison ivy plant, he sounds like he's happy though. He said, "I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. I am fascinated by the natural world, and I'm always looking for the most interesting thing in the woods." So he sounds happy despite the fact that he got poison ivy on every part of his body. Not actually, just like a few parts, but you know. It's interesting, I guess. 68 feet high. I don't know if I said that. It was 68 feet high. This poison ivy plant. Who's the poor sap that has to measure that from Guinness? Let's move on to our next story. There is an investigation in Houston, Texas, after there were 911 calls about a body that was found in a wooded area. The Harris County Sheriff's Office showed up, and after a few hours, they determined that it was a sex doll. It wasn't a body at all. It turned out to be a sex doll. Oof! Yes. Another one of these stories. To be fair, I mean, if you do look at the picture, the doll is pretty dilapidated. And it was partially hidden inside of a bag. There's a partially open bag in the woods that the sex doll was in. So people need to stop discarding their mannequins and sex dolls in the middle of the woods because it's giving everybody a fright. There has to be a better way to dispose of these things. But on the bright side, it gives us a lot of news to talk about. I always get to bring it up. Oh boy, long-time viewers of the channel know that I like to end weird news reports on a really good, inspiring episode. And this week is no different. The article of the week for this week. Man finds 1 million pennies while cleaning out home. That's about $10,000. Which, hey, I mean, that's good to find. It's just I guess, what was it? There was this family that was cleaning out one of their relatives' homes. And I don't know, I think he might have been, I don't know if he was a hoarder in general or just a hoarder of coins. It's one of those two anyways. They found all these bags that have that contain just like more than 1 million pennies. The only bad thing is that they can't get any banks to actually take the pennies. They can't get any banks to actually take the pennies because I guess they don't want that many pennies. So they ended up just selling all of the coins on a resale website. They were asking for $25,000 for all of the pennies, which is more than the value of the pennies. But they're justifying by saying that there could be like a rare penny in it. The coins are all copper and not zinc. Zinc is what the United States switched the pennies to in the 1980s. So they're all old pennies. There could be a valuable one in there somewhere. That would be a fun way to spend time, is looking through 1 million pennies to try to find a rare type of penny. That would take a long time. You could probably do it in like a few months. Maybe if you're just like spend a couple hours a day. That would suck if you didn't find anything though, any actually rare pennies. And you'd be down $15,000. Yeah, I probably wouldn't buy those pennies. Probably because I don't have $25,000 laying around, but also because I don't want to look through all those pennies. All right, that's all the news that you need to know. Probably.